I think you are live already. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to this session where Dr. Barbara Chamberlin will present about user testing and ways to communicate with user. For those who doesn't know me, my name is Matheus Araujo, and currently I work as a postdoc researcher at the Innovative Media Research and Extension Department at the New Mexico State University, and I work directly with Dr. Barbara Chamberlin in the Learning Games Lab. But probably you are noticing my accent, so yes, I'm from Brazil, and I got my master and also my doctoral degree at UFPR. So in Curitiba, in the design department, so I always have participated in SEMANA D. So I'm very happy to be back here in a different position. And thank you, Pro Design, for this opportunity. Rosangela for helping us with all technological issues. Thank you for helping us. I also would like to thank you, Michele Aguiar from Universidade Positivo for thinking on us for this session. Thank you, Michele. And thank you, Dr. Barbara Chamberlin, for participating and give us a little bit of her time in this Saturday to share her expertise with us. And also thank you all you for joining us in this Saturday evening. So let me explain how things will work here. So basically, Dr. Barbara Chamberlin will present for about 30 minutes. And then we will have a Q&A session when you can ask questions through the chat, and she will address that. So we acknowledge that English is not your first language, it's not mine either. So sometimes we don't feel comfortable asking questions or typing questions in English. And so I would like to highlight that we are not here to evaluate your English at all. We are here to share experience, to learn from each other. And for that to happen, we need the interaction. So if you feel more comfortable typing your questions in Portuguese, I will be happy to help and try to translate that so Dr. Barbara Chamberlin can address that. So with that said, let me introduce you our speaker. So Dr. Barbara Chamberlin is the director of the Learning Games Lab. She is professor, instructional designer, game developer, and researcher. Dr. Barbara Chamberlin has been working in educational game development since in 1993, creating over 30 games and securing more than 45 million in grant funding. She has a PhD in educational technology from the University of Virginia, but thinks she may have learned the most by being a mom, game player, museum advocate, and school volunteer. Most recently, she has been working on the National Science Foundation-funded MathSnack series of games, animations, and apps, particularly on ways to use them with teachers in classrooms. Of personal interest to her is game-based learning in math, science, and financial literacy, as well as development of life skills through gameplay. Her research also includes refining user testing methodologies for using during formative development of games and learning tools. With that said, is with you, Barbara.
Excellent. Boa noite. It is so boa noite. Boa noite. My Portuguese is very small and very poor. I am an enthusiastic learner, but a very slow learner when it comes to Portuguese. So thank you for being willing to let me talk to you today in English. I very much appreciate that. It is such an honor to come back to Brazil again. I was there a little over a year ago and fell in love with Curitiba and the university, but mostly, of course, with all the people that we had a chance to meet. And I have to say, I'm kind of jealous. I haven't gotten to come to this event every year because it's pretty remarkable. It was really cool hearing about all of the different talks you've heard so far today. It sounds amazing. And I imagine your brains are a little full. You've taken in a lot of information. Hopefully, you've had a lot to think about. So I especially appreciate your attention tonight as we dig into yet another topic. And it's something that I really am excited about and something that I really enjoy talking about. So it's a gift to be able for me to come for you. So thank you for giving me that gift. Okay, so let me share my screen and let's get this party started. All right. I wanted to talk today about guiding principles for user testing. Really how people think and communicate their ideas. We have loved having Matheus come and work with us. He started working with us on one of our Math Snacks games, and that was a little over a year ago. And now, as he mentioned, he's doing a 2-year postdoc with us. It's fascinating having someone who has more of a design background come and bring his expertise to the work that we do at the Learning Games Lab. So the Learning Games Lab is both a space here where I am now at New Mexico State University, and it's also the name we refer to when we talk about the development work that we do. So we're kind of rare in that we are at a university, but we are really more like a nonprofit design studio, a design studio that is not designed to make money. Everything that we do is based on research to help take university-based research and help everyday normal people like myself apply it in meaningful ways. And we do all of that with digital media. So we make apps, interactive science labs, animations, video, other kinds of interactive learning tools and websites. And we do it for a wide range of people. So right now, we've just released some apps for preschoolers, young learners who are 3, 4, 5 years old, to help them on physical activity and get them to try to eat new foods. We have math games for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We have a health policy game for how government can help with health policy for middle school. We have interactive labs, science labs on how you sample water for high school students ages 15 to 18. We are working on programs for college students in undergrad through high school. We're working on things for adults, such as farmers who are working on water testing in their own field. So we do lots of different content, from nutrition to health to math to finances, for all the ages. But one of our guiding principles is to do user testing and to do a lot of testing. So I want to hear about you. So I want to ask you, why do you conduct user testing? Or what kinds of products would you want to do user testing on? So the way to do that today is to go to the website menti.com and use that code up at the top. It's MENTI.com. And the code is 8494178. And I have that URL and the code up on the top of the slide. Hoping you can still see my screen that has that on there. And then tell me why you would conduct user testing. What kind of products do you develop? What kind of tools or interfaces you create? Are any of you app developers? Would you be doing what we would call an infographic or an informatic, some kind of a map? Would you be looking at different products that you have in development? When we talk about users of your products, what are some of those products? And again, that's MENTI.com, and it'll ask you for a code 8494178. Matheus, feel free to jump in there. Is the technology working okay where we can see that on the screen?
Yeah, I think they just post on the chat for the group, the menti.com page and the code. So I think we need to give them a little time so they can go there.
And as Matheus said earlier, you can do this in Portuguese. You do not have to write this in English. Do it in what's most comfortable for you.
Yes, and I will try my best to translate that.
Please.
And, yeah.
Yes. Okay, we're going to leave this up and let it keep going so that as I go back to my slides, you can keep this up, and it's a way to kind of share with each other what kind of things that you do and you are interested in. All right. Do we want to do a little more time, do you think, Matheus, or should we
have 3 things over there if you want to show them and talk about them.
Sure.
People post 3 of them.
Yes, for gathering.
Yeah.
Yep. Gathering preferences. Yep. And digital solutions. Absolutely the kind of things we do here. Yes. New features in digital solutions. I like that what I'm seeing here is we have some things thinking about user testing before we make the product, some things that are already going on, and then testing things after. So I like we're seeing that range.
I like that someone put the public service, because sometimes we have so many issues with public service. So the idea of like testing new feature in digital solutions for public solutions is something very interesting.
Yes. So we test for a number of reasons. Partly is to get an idea of what we're developing, but often to get an idea of what needs to be developed. The other reason we test is when we interact with audiences a lot, we build our own design intuition. We build our own sense of design better the more we interact with others. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. I couldn't get to the mute button fast enough. I'm so sorry. Ergonomics, excellent. Feel free to keep typing in if you have other ideas on that. All right. So when I first started working here, we did user testing with our games in development or interactive labs, and I hated it. I hated it. User testing, and I'm not alone. A lot of people dislike user testing. And one of the reasons I hated it was because it took time. All the methods that people would use, you have to gather people together. And then if you record it, you have to go watch the recordings. You have to analyze it. You have to code it. And so by the time we'd get around to implementing what we learned in user testing, it would be weeks after we did the user testing. It would just take too much time. So I knew if I wanted to do user testing, I had to fix that. The second reason I hated it was getting access to users. We could go to a classroom, we could have them to our building, we would have to have them sign the consent forms. If they were kids, they would have to sign the assent forms. So if we had children, they had to have slips that went home to their parents and would do it in a class, and then school would be canceled for some reason. Just getting access to users made user testing a big darn deal. And then the third reason I hated it was, especially when working with kids, we would ask them questions and they wouldn't know how to answer because they were not trained as testers. And this is also true for us as developers. We sometimes weren't really good at eliciting that information either, because doing user testing well is a thing, but it can be done more easily. So we came up with a way to fix some of these things for our studio that made it easier for us to do it. We fixed the time issue so we could immediately implement what we learned. We fixed some of those access issues, and we found some ways to make the people we were testing with better at giving us information. That's what I want to talk about today, so you can pull whatever from those situations is best for you. One of the ways we fixed that was by creating this space. So here in the Learning Games Lab, and I'll turn my camera around in a minute and show it to you, but we bring kids in for think tanks. So we don't call them summer camps or classes. We talk about these youth and often adults as our consultants so that they understand how important it is, the work that they are doing. Over the summer, we'll break them in for week-long sessions where we teach other digital school skills, teach them some game development or some design skills. And then we have events throughout the year. So what that means is we've got a bank of people we can pull all the time. So the access issue has been fixed because we have this partnership where we can regularly pull them in. That has come in very handy during COVID when we haven't been able to meet face-to-face, but we still were able to do some of these sessions through Zoom and online. So let me give you just a tour. Maybe I'll stop my sharing and I'll just give you a quick little tour of our space. It's, you know, it's kind of weird because chairs are stacked, but one of my favorite things is the wall has carpet on it because when you have a lot of kids, and a lot of noise and playing video games, it helps with the noise. But we also wanted the space to feel cool. We didn't want it to feel like a university lab where you'd be under harsh light and people would be asking you questions. We wanted it to feel like a place where you come and you play and you're kind of hip and cool, and this is what all the cool people do. Okay, so different colors, lots of TVs, all the game consoles. The other thing that's interesting is all of the furniture is very movable so that we can change the room however we want. So we have a lot of whiteboards that you can move and roll around. So kind of a couch area where they can hang out, or we can do some focus groups. Okay, let me spin you around. I don't want to give you motion sickness here. So then we also have over here an area where they can go and sit and use computers. That's our video closet. That's our video closet. I'm going to talk about that. Actually, we can go over and we can see the video closet. Let's see. I'm going to give you a little motion sickness, a little tour here. Okay, so here's our video closet where there's a chair in here where the person can sit. There's a whiteboard so that people can go in. There's a tripod where we'll put an iPad so that users can come into our video closet and close the door and kind of have a little recording booth so we can ask them questions in that. Just countertops with computers. One things we've learned is kids hate to write with a pencil. You give them pencil and paper and it's like they stab themselves with it because they hate writing so much. But like in the coffee bars, they have kind of these cool stools. And so just by elevating the counters a little bit, the kids were more willing to type and to give us some feedback. Okay, let me get set back up here so I'm not moving as much. All right, so this is the Learning Games Lab. I'll share my screen again. And this is where we do a lot. We will also do testing in classrooms, but that's about 20% of the testing we do, and that usually happens later in our user testing, because here we can just do so much more in our space here when we have kids with us, and it's easier to have access to them whenever we need to go down. We doing okay on questions? Did I give anyone motion sickness? We okay? All right, the other thing we do is we train our testers. So when we have those people here for a week, whether they're kids or adults, depending on what products we're doing, we go through activities that are designed to make them better testers. We have them start learning in very casual ways of vocabulary about different types of games so that they understand if they really like puzzle games and we give them a strategy game, they know that those are two separate things. And they don't just tell us that they hate it because it's a strategy game when they like puzzle games. They're able to say, oh, we all have preferences for games and give feedback without that. But we also give them lots of training in articulating preferences. We have them play our games, but we have them play other games, all the other consoles. We have them play board games. We have them play digital games. And then we ask them all sorts of questions to get them used to being a reviewer. And we ask them to become critical reviewers. How could you take this board game and change one rule and make it better? What is great about that game? What's weird about this game? So that they are used to really doing the mindful reflection that helps them give good feedback. That's not the entire part of the think tank when we have them, but we always include some activities like that. We also, in addition to giving them that practice, we really emphasize their role. One of the things I say at the beginning of every session is, look, we have an awesome team of developers here. Researchers, developers, game programmers, animators, and at one point, they might have been 13 years old. But they don't know what it's like to be 13-year-old now. You all know what that's like. So we emphasize throughout our workshop that their role is important and they can do something that none of us can do. And that's important and it's valuable. And we often see in our youth, especially over the course of a week, in addition to what we get out of them, which is knowledge about our projects, we hear from their parents the impact on these kids of understanding that their voice matters and understanding that they have expertise and knowledge that can help other people. It's really a transformative experience for a lot of these kids to be listened to in a meaningful way. Okay, so I want to share with you my 7 tips that I think has really helped us do user testing well. The first is that working with users should not be a test of success, but really part of the design process. So often we do all of our work in developing, and then we show it to someone and say, is this right? And boy, if it's not, we've wasted a lot of time and money. Traditionally, there's a common view of formative testing where over timeline, we might do a lot of working, get a prototype, and then we might show it to them and say, do you like it now? We can change some things, say, well, do you like it now? Change some things and do that again. And that's if we're lucky. A lot of people in product development really may just do testing once or twice. And that's okay. That didn't work for us. When you have a game in development over 2 years, like I said, you do your testing at the end, you're stuck if you have really missed something important about your age group. So since we can bring kids here and have access to them all the time, we don't have to have it all done to this point to do testing on all of it. We can test individual pieces throughout development. So we can do some testing just on concepts of what we want to do. We can do a separate test just looking at characters or art as we're working on something. We've done passes just over scripts before, where we have everybody just kind of sit and close their eyes and they listen to scripts that are being read. We certainly do testing on usability. Can they manage the interface? Does it work the way we want it to? And then, absolutely, we will have a prototype and say, do you like it now? How does it work? And we'll make changes. We can look at age appropriateness. We can look at the instructions. Now that we're on this next level, is the level balanced? Do the instructions work? Our testing has gone from a test of does this entire thing work to guiding us in each of these individual areas. And we can do these things many times over, as many times as we need, because we found a way for user testing to move so much more quickly. One of our games in Math Snacks went through 60 user tests, and they weren't all 3-hour tests. Some of them were 10-minute check-ins to get ideas on components from that. Number 2, don't ask the question you want answered. This is tricky. Matheus, this one might be weird. Do you think we need a Portuguese translation on this one?
I don't think so.
You're okay? Okay.
But the idea is that não pergunte a pergunta que você quer saber a resposta, mais ou menos isso, I guess.
Okay. Are you waiting to see where I go with this?
Yes.
So this was for a series of animations we did on general health practices for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, trying to get them to wash their hands and use soap when they wash their hands and not share water bottles. And we just wanted to know which of these 5 art styles work the best, right? That was our question that we needed answered. Which of these 5 should we use? We can't ask that in user testing, and there's a lot of reasons why. I'm going to talk about that. But so we have to be kind of tricky in figuring out the answer to that question without specifically asking that question. And we can do that by observing how people respond to things, by having discussion about other aspects of the animations, by having creative activities, because groupthink can take over where everybody starts trending for one person. There's a lot of reasons you get false information when you just ask the question. Let's dive into this a little bit more. Generally speaking, people are not very good at saying why they like or dislike something. This is true for all of us, especially kids. Here's why. For you to be able to tell me why you like something, for example, number 1, you have to know that you like it. You might even never have even thought about it before. You might not have a preference one way or the other. You just haven't even really thought about it. It's just there. And then once you know you like it, you have to know, why do I like it? Is it the color of the person's hair? Is it the weight of the line drawing? Is it because they remind me of that other person I knew once? Then you have to move beyond noticing. If I said, hey, what do you think of my outfit today? You might say, that's a great necklace. And it might not be because you actually like the necklace. It might be because that's the first thing you notice. And when we ask specific questions about things, the first things we as humans do are look at what we notice first. And that might not actually have anything to do with the larger issues. Of course, we have to overcome influences, right? If I ask you what you think about my outfit, you might feel that you want to please me and you want to give me a compliment and you're so happy that I'm here and I seem like a nice person and you want to come. Or you might decide instantly that you don't like me and you want to knock me down a peg, and you will find a way to do that. These influences are real, but they're not always easy for us to recognize. Once you get all those 4 steps done, you have to be able to communicate clearly. And this is especially hard for kids who are just building some of their social skills. And then, of course, if our user can do all of those things, I have to be able to understand and let go of my own biases. Okay, this is, I think, the biggest issue when it comes to user testing, is how to get the answer to the question that you can't really ask directly. So we have some strategies for that. Oh, for some reason I went backwards on my slide. Well, we'll just review these points again.
They are very important, so we need to review
them.
They
are very important points, so we'll just review them again. There we go. Okay, so here are questions that you should not ask. Do you like it? You can't ask that one. Is it too hard? Do you hate it? Is it boring or hip or happy or great? Is it too juvenile for kids younger than you? Is it too easy? Can you figure out how to work it? Are you learning what you're supposed to? These are the questions I want to know the answers to all the time. I can never ask them. For starters, they are all yes or no questions. And I guarantee it that if you ask these questions of kids, you are going to hear a lot of, yeah, no, and that doesn't help anybody. So that's the first problem, is yes or no questions. So start with the right questions. I will write them down. And what the danger words is to start with do or is. Because if you start with do you like this? Is this right? Those are putting you into a yes or no question. So if you just in your mind eliminate do or is to start, and start thinking of ways like how, tell me. These are great conversation starters because it asks your users to dive a little deeper. And then I will always, always, always write the questions first. I will have written questions, more questions than I need. And it's not because I forget what they are. It's because when you're listening to someone, you're and you immediately follow up. It's amazing how quickly your brain just goes to the yes or no question. So if you write those down, it really helps avoid yes or no questions. This is another strategy I like. They are advisors, not subjects. It helps me think a lot in terms of this kid sitting right here. I am not trying to figure out how she feels about the game. I'm trying to have her help me understand how all the people she knows in her age group feel about the game. It's so much easier for us to forecast how we think other people feel about something than to answer for ourselves. So it's a nice strategy instead of saying, how do you feel? Do you think this is juvenile? Is this too young for you? Is to say, what of your friends, what would you tell them about this game? And then they start talking right away. Which of your friends would appreciate this game and why? Describe someone you know in your life that would like this game. Why would they like it? What about this person? Why would they hate it? That's when you start getting a lot of rich feedback. So what age is this game for? Think of your friends who will like it. What kind of games do kids in your class like? And we usually ask those in a couple different ways. Number 3 is to coordinate multiple ways of getting feedback. I said we ask these in different ways. So The most common thing we do is to at least use 2 or 3 strategies whenever we have a test session. Even if it's only 30 minutes, we usually will try multiple ways to get feedback. So one would be probably most common with our software is 1-on-2 observation, where one of us is watching 2 people play a game, right? If we have 6 kids, there's 3 of us. I'm watching these 2, Matheus is watching those 2, Adrian is watching those 2, and we just watch them. We don't talk to them about it. We don't interact with them. We don't say, hey, try hitting this button, right? We just watch them and we take our notes. Then we love having group discussion. I never only do group discussion. Group discussion is tricky because it trends towards the person who talks the most. And there's a lot of people who have some great ideas who don't feel comfortable talking in group. But we almost always encourage a group discussion because it gets people thinking. And even if they don't feel comfortable talking in front of a group, you get them started thinking. Then we can send them to that video closet. Video closet is a great way to end the day, where we might be talking about, we have these 5 different art styles. I want you to tell me what you notice about the art styles. What do you notice in terms of line width or color? And we don't ask them what they like. We just ask them to tell us what they notice. And then after we have that discussion, we might send them to the video closet where we would say, pick one of these and tell us the story you want to tell. And then in the video closet, they can say, I picked this animation because it's really fun and so forth and so on. And then they tell us the story. And then we know they like that one best and why. A video closet works great to kind of give kids a chance once they've thought about issues to document that. And then we have a video we can watch and share with all of our developers because our developers are doing the testing here. We do a lot of creative development where we might show kids a character and then say, we want you to draw another character that should go into the game. Think about what they're wearing, what kind of accessories they have, and tell me the story about them. And then our developers hear the kids explain the kind of characters they want. It helps us get into the mindset a lot. So we'll ask them to draw characters or backgrounds or tell a story about one of the characters we have drawn. So asking them to be creative is very useful.
We have a question in the chat, Barbara.
Excellent.
So, Michelle,
before I go on to that, let's pop over to Mentimeter. And then while answering this question, if you have methods that you have used for user testing that I haven't mentioned, go and put them in here. And we can see if there are other strategies that you all have, such as information, interviewing, that sort of thing. Okay, and we'll give them a chance to do that. Sorry, Matheus, hit me with those questions.
So the question is from Michelle. I think you can see in the screen. Can we use the Likert scale to support these answers? It does work.
So you've probably seen as well the Likert scales that are smiley faces. And so I think something like that would work. I generally tend to bend more on the qualitative side of things. So if I were to use a Likert scale, I would do it in terms of helping kids position where it would be, as opposed to getting a final reading of how kids felt. So I would not. So we did some work with Facebook in there. We did some user testing for them with their Messenger app for kids. And so we had 2 different classes of kids. So they were working with 20 kids in each of the 2 different classes while they were forming that software. And so I could have, for example, and we did, give them a Likert scale about a new feature that was added. How I would use that would not be to then give Facebook the final reading on, well, this feature had 4 and this feature got 3. How I would use it would be to have the kids pick where it would be and then have the kid explain, why wasn't it a 5 or why wasn't it a 2? And then the way they describe why they ranked it is usually so much more meaningful to us than just the number that they give. Did that answer your question, Michelle? Michelle, hi, it's so nice to see you. Yeah, so we see some people doing interviews. Excellent.
Oh, we have another question. In case of very low budget, what do you consider the most important parts and equipments to build a testing lab?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is from Gisele.
Okay. So this, we are on a low budget. It's funny to think about that because track lighting looks expensive. It's a myth. But what I think is most important is your developers to be in on the testing. which is great because paid services, you don't get that anyway. So for me, it's important for our developers to actually sit and interact with them. That's one. Two, one of the most important things is to give it a little bit of time. It's hard to come in and get rich feedback from kids when you just pop in for half an hour and then you leave. What's nice about our summer programs is because they're here for 4 hours a day, they are doing activities with the teacher and building a relationship with them so that then we can pop in and leave, but it still feels very comfortable to them. When they are in this space and they are used to hanging out together and different people coming in, and then we come in and do an interview with them and then we leave, that might just take us half an hour, but it's because they've had the 4 hours and the time of being in here with trust and listening to each other. So I'm seeing some case studies, some active listening, observation. We do think aloud activities. We've been doing that on Zoom. We're going to be doing one of those in 2 weeks where we'll go through a prototype on Zoom and say, what do you think is going to happen if I go here? What do you think this means? So that's another strategy that we use. All right, moving forward. All right, number 4. Work with users ±1 and gatekeepers. Who controls use of your game or your interactive or your font display, whatever it is that you are creating, who will be using it and who will be delivering that to other people? We were doing an animation years ago on, I think this is on rate and ratios, and we had a very clever animation mocked up. It was a very simple storyboard. We were just sharing and reading the script about princess who was running her kingdom, and she had to have the right ratio of different people, and she was using magic to change it. And kids loved it. But we had some teachers come in, and it was interestingly right at the point where there was a lot of backlash against Harry Potter. And there was also backlash about the idea of magic and science being the same thing. So even though the kids liked this, what we were hearing from a lot of the teachers and adults is they were frustrated at the idea of using magic to explain science. And we thought, as clever as this animation is, if the teachers won't show it to the kids, it doesn't matter if the kids like it or not. So we shut it down. So it is useful to do testing with whoever you're trying to reach. And then if it's kids a little bit older and a little bit younger, or gatekeepers or parents or adults, or use them as an advisory board just in case you're missing some things. Okay, number 5, don't fix it just because someone mentions it. So my example on this is a light switch at home. I noticed the other day that my light switches were getting really dirty around where I would flick the light on. And I thought, you know, they need to make like a plexiglass, like a clear plastic plate or something that goes over that so that the tile doesn't get as dirty. All we could do, and I was thinking all this time about how could we design like a light switch that was bigger, and I kind of got a ways down in my thinking on that. And then I suddenly realized, or you know what else would work? Taking a sponge and wiping off the wall. Because that solves the problem like that. And we see this all the time in our user testing. Somebody mentions something because they notice it or they have a great idea for it, but it doesn't mean it's broken. The correlation to this is the game needs more levels. To me, when a kid plays our game and says, the problem is it needs more levels, I'm like, yes, because that means they want more. And if they want more, it doesn't mean I failed. It just means they've really liked the game. So the kicker, the question is, does it do what it needs to do? Are there any deal breakers? Or are there anything that stops it? And then if we get feedback about other things, that's great. We don't have to use it all. It's great to collect it from them and be like, thank you very much for that input. But you're doing the user testing for a reason. And it's not just to make all the changes from your users. You have to determine what you actually want to move forward with. So this is important. As a team, you decide what information to use. That's why here, we don't have testers and developers. We have everybody do that as a group. And we as a team talk about that. We document those findings immediately. This is part of our process. My goal to make that user testing happen quickly. We have a journal where every time we have a session, this is on our game outbreak squad. We put that into our journal. We put screenshots of the game as it stands that day. We have a list of the testers we did, where we're at, just some information. And then we as a group, immediately before our test, if we're going to be with the kids at 3 o'clock, at 2:30, we will meet out in the hall. We'll say, okay, what are we looking at today? And we will, as a group, identify, okay, we need to check out the new level 7. Does that make sense? When they are finished with level 6 and we get that pop-up screen, did they understand what that meant? There's a new readout on our low risk meter. How are they feeling about that? Okay, and then we just want to see if we got that bug fixed, you know? So we will kind of, as a group, make sure we're all on the same page about what we're testing, and then we'll agree on our methods. Okay, so we're going to do some 2-on-1 observations, and then we'll do user test. We'll do the video closet. Then during, we have one person, and their job is just to document the process. Amanda Armstrong usually fills that role in our shop here. Her job is not to ask questions of the kids. Her job is not to interact. Her job is to know, what is this? If Matheus is one of the observers, what are the questions Matheus is asking? How did we do this? So that when we have our journal, we can look back months ago and say, did we even take this issue to them already? What did they say about that? And that person's job is to just document the process we used. And then this is a hard and fast rule. We only break it like 1/10 of the time. Immediately after, we all get together, no longer than a 20-minute meeting. What did we learn? And the reason for that is we should be able to go back into development the next day and implement those changes. No more 2 or 3 weeks analyzing data. Immediately after, what are we going to do? What did we learn? What do the developers need to do at this point? And those are documented as well. And then that ties to number 7, which is to articulate the problems, not the solutions. We are designers. We all are constantly thinking of how to fix things, looking for solutions, right? That's natural for us to do that. This is a readout we were doing to help kids think about place value in math. I'm so proud of this readout. It took us so long to get kids to think about math in different ways. There's a number line for how big it gets. There's blocks. There's a lot of different ways to think about numbers here. We had to test this several times, and it was hard for us to not see a problem a kid was having with understanding the interface and say, oh, we should just do this and it's fixed. We had to articulate the challenge they didn't understand, because we could fix it to our mind and it wouldn't be, and then we couldn't remember what the problem was. So in that 15 minute debrief, when we're done, we identify not what do we need to fix, unless it's something obvious like a bug, but what were the challenges about what they did or did not understand. Then our development team could go forward and say, I've got an idea for what we need to do. But in documenting it, we document those problems. Okay, so these are really the 7 things that have helped us. Your testing should be part of the design process. Don't ask what you want to know. Find other ways to figure that out. Get that feedback in multiple ways, never just one testing method. Get your users +or-1 and the gatekeepers. Don't fix what isn't broken. It's okay to ignore some advice. Do that as a team. And then make sure when you're documenting that you're noting problems and not solutions. Okay, so this is the opportunity where you can share recommendations you have. Let's learn from each other in this community. Or if you want to ask some questions, we wanted to make sure we had some time to describe more about the kinds of things we do, or to hear about what has worked well for you. So let's go on that website if you would like to. Put some recommendations up there on Mentimeter to share with each other. And otherwise, I'll open the floor for either questions or great recommendations you have that we can share with each other.
Yeah, so we have a question already. So Gisele is asking, what sample size do you use for testing one solution? Number of users testing the same solution?
Yes, so because we're qualitative, we don't do a lot of A and B testing here. So A and B testing being For example, we're going to release one version of a game that has this feature and one version of a game that has this feature, and you have to have a certain number of sample size to compare those. We don't do that. Everything we do is more qualitative. We usually like to have, kind of for me, the golden range is about 3 to 12 people. If it's one, it can be very intimidating to give your feedback to a group of people. If it's 2, then you feel like you're always disagreeing with them. If it's 3, then you feel like you're more than a group. More than 12, and it's just noise. So for us, especially with kids, we'll try to go 3s, kind of groups of 3s or 4s. And if we have more than that, we'll put them into smaller groups at tables or things like that. So for example, if we're doing a game observation, we'll put them around tables close to each other, like 5 or 6 people, and intentionally get them talking to each other. And then we'll listen to what they say to each other. Did that answer your question, Gisele? I can't see their chat, so I'm going to assume if she doesn't come back, we got it.
Yeah, I'm looking at that in the chat. She didn't say something about it, if you answer or not yet. So maybe we have some delay.
All right, Michelle says it's a great challenge. It is, and I will tell you, the opening of this where I said, I don't hate it anymore. The truth is I do hate it sometimes. Sometimes we have a problem like, oh, we got to take it to the kids today. And it's not that I don't like the kids, because I do. It's always hard for us to put our work up for judgment from other people. That's hard. And it's never fun, especially if you get it a little bit wrong and you get feedback from someone. That's hard. However, it is always better to get that before the end of the product, and getting that feedback at the end of the product is horrible. It's horrible. So, I like to spread out that judgment into decent sized chunks.
So we have another question from Gisele. Thank you, Gisele, for the questions. She asking, why do you prefer group testing than testing with individuals?
Oh, that's a good question, Gisele. I think about that for a minute. One, efficiency. Doing it one at a time just takes longer, right? But the other thing is, again, if you get them talking to each other, sometimes that feedback is more authentic and it's easier to get. So I was talking about the Facebook project that we did. One of the things we would have them do, for example, when we were testing a new button on an interface or a new way of doing things, is we would have them in groups. In fact, we even had like picture frame mats that would serve as like the interface. They could talk to each other. And we would have them as a group design that interface and say, we're trying to figure out a way to help you do this kind of a thing. How would you do that? And then what was useful to us was, sure, they would give us the presentation after, but what was useful was for us to walk around and hear them saying to each other, no, that won't work because of this. No, that won't work because of this. So as much as you can get people talking to each other about issues, it's so much better than talking to me. Also, it removes some of the bias of how you feel about me or nervousness in working with me. But that's similar to when we talk about our math games as well. Like in games for the math class, we always tell teachers, get your students to turn the volume up, because if the kids are talking to each other about the game, they're going to talk to each other about the math. So I'm generally in favor of trying to encourage that interaction more than with me. Yeah.
So while we are waiting some question, I have a question. So can you describe a little bit how is the ethics committee to approve a user testing at the university? I think that probably people will be interested in learn about that. It's something that,
Yeah. So I think this is similar at most universities worldwide, but you should have an institutional review board that looks at any research you are doing. There's a lot of worldwide issues that have prompted that. And if it doesn't happen at a university, or if you are not affiliated with the university, it absolutely should be affiliated at a school district or anytime you're working with kids. So it used to be that you could do what's called general consumer product testing ideas. So interface, or what do you think of this product? That was considered general consumer information. And while we would have to submit that to our board, it was considered exempt for consent. So it used to be, and it still is with adults, that if I just want to ask, how do you feel about this program? How do you feel about the interface? I can review it with my board. I still have to submit it. They look at what I'm doing. They agree I'm not putting anybody at risk. And then I don't have to have those users fill out a consent form agreeing to be part of the study. A consent form says that you know what the risks are, you know what the benefits are, you agree you can leave at any time. There's a couple key elements of consent. So it used to be, for this level of testing we would do, we were exempt. We wouldn't have to have consent forms. That just changed a couple years ago, so that now there is no research with kids that is exempt from consent. So if you are using kids 12 to 18, even if all you're doing is, do you like red or do you like blue, you still should have consent from the parents or from the adult. And so that's, we've tried to get that consent form as simple as possible, because sometimes when you're telling somebody what the risks are, even if there aren't risks, just saying there aren't really risks to this still stresses people out. So we're at a university, we are extremely conservative and cautious in making sure we get that consent from adults and from kids, consent from the parents, assent from the child who agrees to do it. But that's a process that should happen. The only times that is not when you need that is when you are taking data that has already been collected for something else, and you're taking that in a way that's anonymous where you don't use the kids' names or anything like that. But user testing, yeah, you should have a board review that for you. And when I say I don't like user testing, that is not a fun process to go through. It's kind of aggravating, but remember, if we didn't have that, we would all be living in a world where we were doing testing on kids who weren't consenting to be part of a research study, and that's not acceptable. So from a larger situation, we should all be doing more to help kids and adults realize what consent is and how important it is that I don't get to do something to you, whether it's taking a photo of you or taking video of you, doing other things or asking you questions. I don't get to do that to you unless you consent and agree to that. So it goes to a larger issue as well, which I think is important.
I think that will be our last question because of our time.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Barbara, how do you account for task groups of people with very poor digital literacy?
Ooh, that is such a good question. So one of my first interactive products that we did some testing on was for the Navajo Nation. It's a population here in New Mexico, a part of our native populations. And this was about 25 years ago, before the internet. I feel so old saying that. And we were doing touchscreen kiosks on the Navajo Nation, which at that time did not have a lot of technology. So we were very anxious as to how would they feel about using this touchscreen, right? And what was interesting was like, not a problem at all. Because it was probably about $18,000 worth of technology that was in that box. But for them, it was just a thing that you interacted with, right? So in some ways, with that technology literacy, we thought it would be a bigger deal than it actually was. Having said that, where I see more of a digital divide now, and it would be interesting to hear what prompted your question for that, is not digital literacy as much as digital comfort. So we see a big difference in that between kids who they don't want you to tell them how to do the thing or which button to use. They just want to have a chance to get in there and figure it out and play with it. Whereas sometimes adults are like, tell me exactly what I'm going to do and which point I'm going to go through and how to do that. So my answer to that is to put it in front of them and see what the issues are. And remember that the comfort that someone has with technology impacts their stress. And when you're stressed, you are less able to figure out things. So I'd like to talk to you more about some of the issues you've had with that. My answer would be to put them into it and then recognize it's a thing. And sometimes knowing it's a thing will guide your own methods.
Okay, thank you. The participants are saying you thank you for your presentation. And so to finish this presentation, I would like to say thank you, Barbara, for this presentation. It's always good to hear from you. And also thank you guys for joining us in this evening and spend some time learning and discussing about design. And thank you,
sticking with us so late at night. Oh, I'm so sorry. Sure. Thanks for sticking with us. I know you're tired and your brains are full and you've got family and dinner and stuff. But thank you. Thank you for sticking with us. I'm sorry I interrupted you with this.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.